I think Tampa will take both games in Tampa to start the series, and then Montreal will win 2 games in Montreal. But then Tampa will win the next one, and then Montreal will win the last 2. I think Montreal will do the same thing the Bruins did. They'll lose all their games on the road until the last one, the one that matters, happens, and they'll take home the cup. What are your predictions?
Suns have the best backcourt duo.
Yeah, so we've already talked about Burrow a lot, especially how he's influenced the Bengals organization to do some questionable things.
A great job from the Islanders to rebound off that and force a Game 7 with Bellavide's game-winning goal in overtime in Game 6.
We don't talk about the 2010s because the 2010s had the Astros, and if the Astros didn't happen, the Yankees would have won in 2017 over the Dodgers.
I'm going to say it's during the Week 17 game after the Cowboys have clinched the division, so we just put Benanucci in.
Vegas was really outplayed the last 3 games of this series, and they did not seem like they wanted it as much as Montreal did.
And then the Oilers versus the Jets. Jets haven't been playing well. Oilers, you got a great offense with Connor McDavid. So I have them sweeping them.
Yeah, well, I don't think you heard my point. The San Francisco Giants have 3 more in the 2010s than the Rangers have in their entire history. So, yeah.
It's hard to get back and to get back-to-back wins. And I don't see the Lightning doing it here, so I have them losing to the Hurricanes in 6.
DeAndre Ayton, I think, will step up in this series and shut down Jokic enough for this to work out for them.
He was close to Frank Reich, and they want Frank Reich back, so that's what they got. It's their discount Frank Reich in Eagles' eyes.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew, Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props, he definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more.
What would you have said if I bet you $100 at the end of the round robin and start of the playoffs that the Stars would be in the Stanley Cup playoffs or Stanley Cup finals?
Hi, this is Julie Dobbs. You're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? We are back with a March Madness episode. It's just Austin and me this time. Make sure to check out our special guest when we made the NCAA official bracket, the Outsiders Opinions Perfect Bracket Challenge. We have 10 members, or actually over 10 members, because some people, no, it's 10 members. But the first top 3 is Andrew, who won it last year. And then it is me in second, or I am in second, and then Jake is in third. And that's the top 3. Make sure to check that out. We do have a prize if you win it, but you have to win it. So if we win it, no one gets anything. So we're hoping for that. And we'll just get right into the bracket as we're going to review the first round and the second round. And we're going by region. So let's start with Gonzaga versus Georgia State, Austin. Really no surprises as Gonzaga was off to a hot start, and they scored 93 points, and Georgia State only scored 72 points.
That's true, but Georgia State was really close for a large portion of the game, but the last 10 minutes, Gonzaga ran away with it. Georgia State was the best 16 seed. They played like it, but there was not much they can do against the number 1 seed overall in the bracket.
Yeah, and then we go to Memphis and Boise State. Wasn't really that close. Yeah, they won by 11. Memphis just stayed hot. I thought Boise State would come out, but they didn't play as well as I thought they would. And Memphis, even with, was he back? I can't remember.
Emoni Bates, yeah, he came back, but he didn't. He was on a minutes restriction. It didn't play a crazy amount, but he did play. And Boise State did come back at the end, cut it to like a 6 or 4 point game, and then Memphis got a couple plays that went their way, and that was it.
Yeah, so not what we expected as we voted for Boise State in our bracket. Then UConn got upset by New Mexico State. Huge upset, 70 to 63. UConn, the field goals were pretty close. UConn with 43% and New Mexico with 46. But 3-pointers, UConn shot 23 and only made 7 of them, while Mexico State shot 17 and only missed 6 of those. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, New Mexico State was the better team and they won. Teddy Allen played very well, and while I didn't anticipate this upset happening, it did, and they moved on to play against the team that won the next game.
Yeah, now we go to Arkansas. Arkansas was 33% from 3-pointers. He shot 21, but only made 7, so they're still struggling from 3, but they were able to pull it out against Vermont.
Yeah, and it was a 4-point close game. I was worried throughout many times, but I was happy with the result.
Now we go to Alabama and Notre Dame. So props to you because you predicted Notre Dame would beat Rutgers, and then you said Notre Dame would win. I was only going to pick the upset if it was Rutgers, but Notre Dame won on St. Patrick's Day, and they upset Alabama. Luck of the Irish, I guess. They only missed 6 3-pointers, 62% from 3 versus Alabama's 33%.
Yep, I was not surprised. I truly believed that Notre Dame was a better team against Rutgers and against Alabama, and it proved to be true.
Yeah, and now we move on to the next game, which was Texas Tech versus Montana State. Texas Tech was firing on all cylinders. Offense, 97 points versus 62 points. Surprising because Texas Tech's offense is kind of finicky, so I'm just surprised that they scored 97 points. It's usual in the NBA, but not usual in college basketball.
Yeah, Texas Tech is definitely a great defensive team, but here they played great offensively. I didn't think Montana State had a great chance of winning this game, but if Texas Tech is going to have a great offensive showing, no team has a real shot because of how good their defense is. And they may be primed to go in the long run because of that duality.
Yeah, now we go to Davidson versus Michigan State. Michigan State won. It was a nail biter as they won by 1 point, but Tom Izzo would face Duke once again in the Sweet 16. No, not in the Sweet 16, to get to the Sweet 16.
Yep. Michigan State held on at the very end. There were some clutch threes made by Davidson, but they couldn't pull through. Michigan State eventually won the game, and while I thought Davidson had a true chance of winning, Michigan State is not a pushover, and they won the close game.
Now we go to Duke versus Cal State Fullerton. Duke was able to pull it out. I think it was close for a little bit, but then Duke pulled away near the end.
Yeah, it was close during the first half for a good portion of the time. But Duke was the better team, more athletic team, larger team, and they just manhandled CSU Fullerton at the end of the game.
Yeah. Now we'll go to the second round in the region, I believe, because we're going by region, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that's Gonzaga versus Memphis. Memphis, I think, had a lead for quite a little bit. They had a lead going into the half, but then Drew Timme gave a speech, and Gonzaga was able to pull out, and that was a nice thing from them. They shot 27 3-pointers, but only made 9 of them, but not many turnovers. 12 combined turnovers, but a lot of fouls from Memphis, and it was good to see that Memphis pulled it out. For some people that have them winning it, but what were your thoughts from this game?
It was a great game. Memphis was up, I think, 41-31 at half, and they looked primed to win the game. But Gonzaga had a great offensive showing in the second half. They scored 51 points, and at the end, they won the game. Drew Timme had a great game. So did Andrew Nembhard. It kind of carried them through, and with foul trouble for Jalen Duren and Williams on Memphis, it really did hinder their ability to play great defense on the best players on Gonzaga.
Yeah. Now we go to Arkansas versus New Mexico State. I'm just going to tell you these 3-point percentages, and I want you to guess which team had them. So which team had 23% from 3?
Arkansas.
No. That was New Mexico State. Arkansas shot 18%. They made 3 out of 16 3-pointers. So 3-pointing, that's a problem. Unless they can turn it on, we'll get to how they will face against Gonzaga. That's a critical point in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes sense. Arkansas is a great defensive team, and both teams shot terribly in this game. when I was watching. It was like 9-9 with 7 minutes left in the half. The game ended at a very, very low scoring affair at 53-48. And Arkansas pulled through, the more experienced team, the better defensive team. It was a good game, but I think the better team won.
And now Texas Tech, better defensive team against Notre Dame, was able to pull it out as they won 59-53.
There were some questionable calls at the end of the game, but Tech pulled through and they definitely played well enough to win. But I don't know how they're going to fare against Duke in the next round, as Tech really has struggled recently on offense. I know they played well against Montana State, but besides that game against formidable opponents, they have struggled mightily.
Yeah, and now we go to the final round or final game in the second round for the region. That's Michigan State versus Duke. It was close till about the final minute. Michigan State just couldn't hit a shot, and then they kept fouling, and that's why it was a lot closer than I think the scoreboard suggests. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was not a 9-point win based on how both teams played. I was very impressed by Duke's resiliency. They were down, I think, 3 or 4 in the final 5 minutes of the
Yeah.
game, but Jeremy Roach, Paolo Banchero really came through. Keels played well. I was impressed by this team. Wendell Moore played well as well. I would not be surprised if this team kept it going. They've looked good.
Yeah, and I do think they edge out Texas Tech because you mentioned the problems with Texas Tech's offense. But if they can just do well defensively and just get enough on offense, then they could possibly beat Duke. But I would probably pick Duke. And I believe we picked Duke in our bracket. Actually, we picked Texas Tech. We have Texas Tech with the upset. So that's what we'll be looking at. And then Gonzaga, we did predict. No, I'm looking at the wrong bracket. We predicted, I believe, New Mexico State, but then we had UConn and then UConn facing Gonzaga, but now it's Arkansas. So those are the two matchups for the Sweet 16 in the West, but now we'll go down to the South region. Baylor versus Norfolk State. Baylor was just hot, 85-49.
Yeah. Norfolk State was seen to be a quality 16 seed. I didn't really see it. They really did struggle against a more formidable opponent, even though Baylor was significantly injured. I wasn't very surprised by the blowout.
Now we go to North Carolina versus Marquette. Marquette was just not playing well, and UNC was firing on all cylinders. They shot 35 three-pointers and made 13. Marquette shot 31 but only made 8, and they each had 10 turnovers. But Marquette, I think you said it best when we were texting. Marquette was could go hot and cold. Their ceiling, huge difference between their ceiling and floor, and they just did not reach their ceiling, and UNC played really well.
Yeah, I don't know if they could have necessarily played worse. I totally agree their ceiling is extremely high in my opinion, but their floor is extremely low, and they definitely played to their floor against UNC.
And now we go to, I believe, St. Mary's versus Indiana. St. Mary's, 82-53. We picked the upset with Indiana, and we were wrong. St. Mary's came to play.
Yeah, I know for this game I did not choose Indiana because I did not see Indiana winning. They don't have a good enough offense. Their only really good offensive player is Trace Jackson Davis, and he could not carry the entire load for what St. Mary's is bringing to the table.
Now we go to UCLA versus Akron. It was close. UCLA only won by 4, but they still won. And maybe it kind of woke them up a little bit.
Maybe. Akron played them well. They were up for the majority of the game, but UCLA pulled it out at the end. I think the experience definitely helped UCLA here.
And now we go to Texas. They were able to beat Virginia Tech. And before the tournament, they just had not shot the three well, but they were 52% from 3. And that's a good job from them. And Virginia Tech had 13 turnovers compared to the 9 turnovers from Texas. So it was a good win by Texas. I didn't expect it.
I was on the fence. At the end of my bracket making, like Thursday morning before the game started, I started to become much higher on Texas. I realized they had a significant chance, but Virginia Tech's not a bad team, and that's why I was only an 8-point win.
Now we go to Purdue versus Yale. Purdue was able to win 78-56.
Yale was not a formidable opponent. I truly believe that they were one of the worst teams in the tournament, and it showed to be true here as they lost by 22.
Now we go to Murray State versus San Francisco. 92 points versus 87.
A very high scoring game because it went into overtime. San Francisco is a very good team, but so was Murray State. And so it was a close game that ended up going to overtime, and Murray State pulled through.
Now we go to the big upset. St. Peter's beats Kentucky 79-85. And they just did. Kentucky did not shoot well from 3. And I believe they just got. St. Peter's just went small. And I believe they were on fire because their field goal percentage was around 50.
That's true. St. Peter's is a much more defensive-oriented team, and they played well defensively, holding Kentucky to only 79 points. That's added on overtime too, so they played well. Oscar Tshiebwe had 30 and 16, so it wasn't his fault that they lost, but Kentucky definitely could have played better. St. Peter's does not have a tall lineup in general, so it's not like they played small. They just played their normal team, and it definitely resulted in a win.
Now we go to another big upset, and that's Baylor versus UNC. It went into overtime, and the score was 93-86. And Manic, I believe, got thrown out 5 minutes left, and Baylor starting to make a comeback. Even injury depleted, they started to do well and make the comeback, but their field goal percentage was 34%, 24% from 3, and they shot 37 threes. But Manic, I think the Tar Heels would have pulled away if Manic had stayed in. But I think him getting kicked out or getting ejected after the flagrant 2 really opened the door for Baylor to make a comeback. What do you think?
That's true, and I think if Baylor wasn't injured, they would have been a much closer game even if Manic stayed. I was impressed with North Carolina here, but I definitely see why they won, and they were probably the better team in this game.
Now we go to UCLA edging out St. Mary, or not edging out, it was 72-56. And UCLA playing well and living up to what we believe them to be, as that we have them winning the championship.
Yeah, I was impressed. St. Mary's got off to a good lead at the beginning, but UCLA pulled away at the very end, and I don't think it was a 16-point lead win. I think the scoreboard definitely shows more than it actually was, but they got it done, and again, I think experience helps UCLA as they made the Final Four last year.
Yeah, and then Purdue beats Texas by a 10-point game. And what were your thoughts on this game?
Purdue, they just have too much firepower. Jaden Ivey, Edey, Travion Williams, Zach Edey, they are just too much on offense for Texas to handle, and that was the end. Timmy Allen is a great offensive player, but he only had 2 points in the game and then fouled out, so that hurts.
Now we move on to St. Peter's versus Murray State. St. Peter's made history once again, being the 15th seed to beat the 2nd seed and reach the 16 or the Sweet 16. And it's a great story from St. Peter's. They did not shoot well from 3, but neither did Murray State. And their field goal percentage was not good, so St. Peter's played good defense again.
That's true. St. Peter's, I think this is a dominating win. I say that because St. Peter's never trailed the entire game and ended up winning by 10. And while it probably should have only been a 5 or 6 point win, St. Peter's never trailing in the game shows that they were dominating the game pretty much from the start.
Now that leaves a matchup of St. Peter's versus Purdue. I'm not sure if St. Peter's can pull off more magic, because we saw with Oral Roberts last year, they just kind of lost steam once they made it to the Sweet 16 and couldn't push it. But
I don't
think
know.
St.
Because Oral Roberts last year lost because Max Asmus missed a buzzer beater. He makes a buzzer beater against Arkansas. They win 73-72 instead of
Forgot about
losing
that.
72-70. So they just need some more magic. Now, I do think this is a terrible matchup for St. Peter's, a team that runs very small comparatively. And there's a 7-4 guy on Purdue named Zach Edey that I think will dominate in the paint. I don't think there's enough from St. Peter's to win this game, but I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, it'd be great to see him continue and just add more to the March Madness story. Then we have North Carolina versus UCLA. I think this will be a tough matchup because North Carolina just seems to be hot as the past two games they've scored above 90 points, even though one was in an OT game against Baylor. But I think UCLA may be able to pounce on them because you mentioned the experience, and UNC may be riding high after that Baylor win.
Yeah, I truly believe that UCLA will win this game, but UNC has shown great fight, and with Armando Bacot, they can win any game.
Now we move into the West region? No, East region. It doesn't have the region on here. But we're moving on to the next region, which is Arizona versus Wright State. And Arizona, 87-70, a little bit closer than I would have thought, but they still won and advanced to the next round. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the game wasn't really close, and it doesn't surprise me by the result. The better team won, and when a 1 seed goes against 16, you don't really expect anything else.
Yeah, and now we go to TCU versus Seton Hall. Seton Hall with 42 points and TCU with 69 points. We believed in TCU and they delivered. They shot only 10 threes, but were 40%. And then Seton Hall shot 21, but only made 6. And what were your thoughts on this game?
TCU was a better team. Seton Hall could never get it together, and only scoring 42 points at a game is pretty embarrassing for a Seton Hall team that had high hopes heading in.
And then Houston advanced 82 versus 68. And Houston just playing well and going on to the next round.
Houston was a better team. Jordan Walker played very well, but the team as a whole didn't, and UAB didn't have enough firepower.
Now we go to Illinois versus Chattanooga, barely edging him out as it was 54-53. Both teams did not shoot well from three and high rebounds, but a lot of turnovers from Illinois with 14. Chattanooga only had 10 turnovers.
Yeah, and Chattanooga led for the entire game except for the last, or not the last, but 47 seconds is the amount of time that Illinois led for, and that's all they needed to pull off the win and stop the upset from happening.
Now we're going to Michigan versus Colorado State. Michigan pulled it out. Juwan Howard returned, and they played well. Colorado State did not shoot well from three, and they really, even though Michigan turned over the ball more than Colorado State, I just don't think they capitalized. And I think it was in the final few minutes Michigan started pulling away, if I recall the game correctly.
Yeah, Colorado State started off extremely hot, but they couldn't keep the fire rolling, and Michigan won the game. They have another team with a lot of experience. They made it to Elite Eight last year, and it does not surprise me that they made it to now the Sweet 16.
Now we go on to the highly debated Tennessee versus Longwood. Longwood, after 21 games, has lost their second game. They were a hot team. Highly recommend watching that episode. I know it's long, but it's pretty funny. We all agreed Tennessee was going to win, but Tennessee just dominated, and they remained hot. They were 58% from three. Longwood just did not hit well, and they had 16 turnovers versus the 12 turnovers from Tennessee. Tennessee just came to play, and Longwood seemed to lose some steam in this game.
Longwood started off hot. They looked like they were deserving of the spot, and while they were, despite the result, they just could not do enough against the great defense of Tennessee, and Longwood's defense, which was questionable all year, definitely could not stifle an SEC opponent.
So now we go on to Ohio State versus Loyola of Chicago. Loyola of Chicago failed to do the upset. Ohio State only made one 3-pointer, shot 15. But to me, I think the main thing was the size. I don't think Loyola plays small, and I saw them just doubling as soon as they got into the paint, and uh, they just tried to do their best. And I believe EJ Liddell had 16 points. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Loyola Chicago. I believe they scored the least amount of points for any team in the first round. Yeah, I just checked. Yeah, they did with 41, one less than the 42 scored by Seton Hall. Their offense couldn't get it going, while their defense did play well, only allowing 54 points. They just could not score.
Yeah, and now we move on to Villanova versus Delaware. Villanova, they're a good team, and they won 80-60. It was good that Gillespie, I think I may be thinking of next round, but Gillespie had 14 points, but it was good to have him back as he missed it last year due to a knee injury, if I'm correct. Yeah, so it's good to have him back. And if I do recall, I think I may be confusing his stats with Gillespie going off. He made some critical shots, I think, in the next game. And he
Yeah,
scored 20 points. So, what were your
yeah.
thoughts?
Delaware held in at the beginning, but they really couldn't do much at the end, and the better team won. Villanova is a team that I really thought was going to do well, and they did. And I'm not surprised by the fact that Villanova, an experienced team, continues to uh, move on.
Then we go to Arizona versus TCU. Arizona clawed back, and TCU played tough, but Arizona kept some hopes alive, kept a lot of brackets alive with their champion, and it's a good win for them. Um, I definitely got a little scared. What about you?
There were some questionable calls. TCU played amazing, and I do question why there weren't some jump balls, some other stuff. I don't know if Arizona's good enough to move past Houston or even further, but we'll have to see. That's why they play the games.
Yeah, and then we go to Houston versus Illinois, 68 to 53 points. Houston is just a good team, and I didn't expect Illinois to go too far. I I was surprised they got knocked out early last year, but to me, I think they just need more experience. Even though you do have Coburn, but I think there need to be other stars around him. What do you think?
Yeah, that's true. And another game with questionable calls. Houston was the better team, though, and I think they deserved to win.
Yeah, I didn't watch. I just saw a lot of Twitter on just how the NCAA needs to fix their refs, and it's like the biggest stage, and you have so many games. They're really trying to outdo the NFL with bad officiating.
Yeah, it's definitely been questionable.
Yeah. Next, we move on to Michigan versus Tennessee. Michigan pulled off another another upset, 76-68. It was a close game, and Tennessee only made 2 threes out of the 18 that they shot, but and Michigan turned over the ball once again, 15 versus the 7, but they were still able to get the win.
Yeah,
What were your thoughts?
Tennessee's just not good enough offensively for Michigan, who had a very hard schedule, but they still have a lot of guys back. Eli Brooks, the fifth-year senior, Dickinson, even though he was a sophomore, went last year to the Elite Eight. A lot of experience. While Tennessee last year lost to Oregon State in the first round, they just don't have enough guys with tenure that have made long runs.
Now we go to Ohio State versus Villanova. Villanova won 71-61. This is when I was talking about Gillespie. He just seemed to make some shots near the end, and I think he's going to be a big player. He was a big player for him last year before the tournament, but now he's back, and it's just good to see him helping Villanova.
Yeah, Villanova was a better team. Ohio State did play well, tried to call back into it, but injuries really set them back, and it does not surprise me by the result.
Now that sets up Villanova versus Michigan. I'm a little worried about Michigan, their turnovers, because in their first 2 games, they had 15 turnovers and then 16 turnovers, and they were still able to win that. But with as good of a team as Villanova is, I don't think you can get away with that many turnovers against them. What do you think?
I totally agree. Turnovers cannot happen against a team like that.
And then it's Houston versus Arizona. Arizona may be tired, and I am not sure if Krissa is he back yet?
Yeah, he played
Fully?
against TCU. He played
Okay.
terrible against TCU, but he's back.
Okay, so maybe that will help, but I could possibly see Houston upsetting Arizona, even though I do have them winning, just given how close it was against TCU, and how you said Chris did not play well, and he may need some rest. So, what do you think?
I think Houston's a better team here. It would not surprise me whether or not who wins, but I think Houston, with the experience of going to the Final Four last year, Arizona, they have a lot of young guys, and while they are the fastest offense, I think Houston's defense will stifle.
Now we go to the final region. That's the Midwest region. We go to Kansas beating Texas Southern 83-56.
Texas Southern just was never in the game, and Kansas is the better team, so they won.
Now we go Creighton upsetting San Diego State 72-69, and they did not shoot well from three. Neither team did. They made a combined 7 3-pointers, 5 from San Diego State and 2 from Creighton. But Creighton had 24 free throws while San Diego had 17. So that favored Creighton. And what are your thoughts?
San Diego State was up big during certain portions of the game. Creighton had a lot of fight in them. They came back. They deserved to win. It was a close overtime finish, but Creighton played better at the end, and that's normally what matters.
Now we have a huge upset, and that's Richmond beating the Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes did not shoot well. 36% field goal and 20% from three. They are the Hawkeyes, but they could not hit their shots, and Richmond just seemed to make all their shots with 42% in field goal. And to me, just seemed like Richmond was fast, and Iowa just couldn't keep up.
100% true. There were some questionable calls at the end of this game as well, but Richmond came through, and Iowa's defense just could not make stops when it mattered.
Now we go to Providence beating South Dakota State 66-57. Providence just played well and was able to beat the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, SDSU, this one had times where they were in the game, but Providence, a lot of experience, a lot of clutch shots. They came through.
Now we go to Iowa State upsetting LSU, and I believe LSU had a 20-point lead at one point, close to the end of the game, or
Iowa State or LSU?
LSU.
I don't think it was 20 points. I think it was like 17.
Oh, 17. Okay.
I'm checking right now.
Okay. I just remember LSU blew lead, and Iowa State just was able to pull through and win it, and makes sense because LSU got rid of their coach before the tournament, so you couldn't really expect much with the new coach in a short amount of time.
Oh, LSU never led the entire game, but there were times where Iowa State was up huge and almost choked the lead. But I've been very high on Iowa State. I love me some Isaiah Brockington. I think they still have a chance to go further in the tournament, and they obviously made it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and Brockington played 38 minutes and scored 19 points. But now we'll go to Wisconsin versus Colgate. Wisconsin edges out Colgate, and Wisconsin just had a good field goal percentage and didn't shoot well from three, but Colgate did. But 12 turnovers versus 5 turnovers. That's going to Wisconsin with only 5 turnovers is going to favor them.
Colgate really put up a fight, but their team just wasn't good enough. It was a close game, and this kind of spelled the end for Wisconsin as they could not dominate against the 14 seed, and it showed in their next game.
Yeah, and then now we move on to Miami versus USC. USC just couldn't win, didn't win 66-68. Miami just was able to edge them out, and they only had 2 turnovers versus 17 turnovers from USC. So that turnovers can't do that, especially when it's such of a lopsided difference.
I was impressed by Miami. This was one of the best games of the first round, and USC just couldn't edge them out at the end. Isaiah Mobley played well, but again, their team just didn't play well enough to win.
And it isn't shocking that Auburn won the first round. It was 80-61. That's what we expected, and I also expected what happened in the second round, but we're still in the first round, and Auburn just gets lucky, but they played well enough to win this game.
Jacksonville State didn't deserve to make it, in my opinion. They lost their conference tournament. They weren't good enough to make it without their conference tournament win, and they kind of got in through some questionable decisions, and they just weren't good enough to beat Auburn, an Auburn team that's been good all year.
Now we go Miami upsetting Auburn. When Auburn faces a good team, they really struggle, like they've lost to Arkansas, and Miami seems to be playing well, and Miami was able to pull off the upset.
Yep, and it almost resembled their first round score as a win. 80-61 Auburn won, and then they lost 79-61. Miami was by far the better team, and Auburn got blown out.
That's a nice catch. And now we move into Iowa State versus Wisconsin, 51-59. I know Brockington only scored 10 points, but the highest score was Cowshear, the guard. And so if Brockington gets hot, then that can help them go further. But it was just a good one from them. And Wisconsin had 17 turnovers once again, even though Iowa State turned over the ball 14 times.
Yeah, a score of 54-49, you know it's going to be a very close defensive matchup. Wisconsin couldn't score enough. Iowa State, I thought, was the better team. And even though they went 2-22 last year, Iowa State's on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and now we move on to Providence versus Richmond. Providence and Richmond both shot 22 threes, but Richmond only made one of those threes. To me, I think their shooting just didn't go well. To me, they were making shots against Iowa, and then they just couldn't do the same thing against Providence.
Yeah, they lost a lot of their firepower, and when you're missing shots that you definitely should make, wide open shots, it definitely hurts your potential.
And now we go to Kansas versus Creighton. It was close till, I believe, the final minute. Creighton just seemed sloppy. They weren't catching the ball. They were trying to throw it cross court, and Kansas kept stealing it, and then that led to Creighton just trying to shoot a big three, but they couldn't do it, and Kansas moved on.
True. Creighton was only down by a point with about a minute and a half left, 73-72, and they never scored again. And Kansas took advantage. Injuries really caught up to Creighton. They had 2 guys out, 2 of their major players, and that always hurts at this point of the season.
Now we go to Kansas versus Providence. I probably think Kansas wins this. Providence just has been they blew out Richmond, and I'm not sure if they're prepared, but I could see it going either way, but I probably lean towards Kansas. What do you think?
I agree, but Providence is a very good team. A team that's only lost 5 games all year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they won it either.
And now we go to Iowa State versus Miami. I think we got an 11 seed versus 10. I think Iowa State pulls it out, even though Brockington hasn't been shooting well or scoring as many points. He hasn't been shooting well from the field goals numbers that I saw, but maybe he turns it on. But I think Iowa State will do well. What do you think?
I think Iowa State wins this game just because of the defensive factor they have. They're one of the best defensive teams left, holding LSU in their first round to 54 and Wisconsin to 49 in the second round. I think Miami will be stifled on when Miami is on offense, and Isaiah Brockington and some of the other guards will play well and allow ISU to move on to the Elite Eight.
Yep, and so be on the lookout for when we review the Elite Eight and Final Four. Will be good to review it, and make sure to check out our total bracket, and we will definitely be posting about the brackets. It will be interesting to see if there are any more major upsets. I'm kind of rooting for Gonzaga to get knocked out because that knocks out half of our group. Or Arizona. I hope Arizona doesn't because I thought Arizona would win, but it'd be interesting to see a Gonzaga win UCLA and see a rematch.
It's going to be a
They'd
great
have
rest of the
yeah.
tournament. I
Yeah.
truly believe that this will be a great end, and there's only 15 more games, but all of them should be good.
Yeah, I didn't think the Madness would live up to what it was last year, but it did. St. Peter's going on a run is pretty crazy.
I 100% agree.
Well, thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions, and make sure to check out other episodes.